Good afternoon. I'm Lynn Flynn, a member of the League of Women Voters, and I'll be serving as moderator for this forum for candidates for state representative in the Kentucky House District 77. The League of Women Voters of Lexington and Civic Lex are the sponsors today. This forum will be available later by going to the League website. We have two candidates for this election who have joined us today. Thank you all for coming. And they are George Brown and Jason Griffith. We're following the League of Women Voters policies and procedures for the forum. In order to give the candidates a fair chance to be heard, we've randomly drawn names using random.org for the order of opening remarks and questions, and then we drew a second time for the order of closing remarks. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to introduce themselves and 60 seconds to respond to questions. Questions have been created by the debate sponsors, and then we've also taken questions from the public. Finally, we'll give each candidate 60 seconds for closing remarks. We'll use the second drawing for the order of closing comments. So we'll begin with our opening comments. The candidates will go in the order of the first drawing, which is Mr. Brown first, followed by Mr. Griffith. Mr. Brown, are you ready with your opening remarks?
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm George Brown. I'm the representative for the 77th Legislative House District of Fayette County. I am a native of Lexington, Kentucky. I grew up in the 77th/1st Council District. I served as a 1st District Council member for 13 years, and I am now state representative for my 5th term. This is my 10th year, and I am running because I think experience matters, and I want to bring my experience back to Frankfort to help make a positive difference for the people of the 77th District.
Thank you very much. Mr. Griffith, go ahead, please.
And I am Jason Griffith, and I'm a candidate for the 77th District for State Representative. I've been at Toyota for 21 years. I've fought many of fights like shared parenting, House Bill 528, where mom and dad shares equal access to their kids and their children. I have a beautiful wife and 3 kids, and I was fortunate enough to actually gain a lot of relationships in the General Assembly, from House reps to state reps. So hopefully I could be able to take my relationships and everything that I've built and my knowledge of what I have to Frankfort and fight for the people of the 77th District and Kentucky as a whole.
Thank you very much. And we'll now move on to our questions. The candidate who drew number 2 in the first random drawing will take the first question. So that's going to be you, Mr. Griffith. So let me get to the question here. What do you see as the single most important issue facing your district, and what is your plan to address this issue?
The main thing that I've seen is the housing. A lot of residents is actually losing their homes, getting put out. And I really want to tackle that. I had a neighbor, it was just horrible watching them getting put out of their home. And I want to be able to actually have the knowledge and the resources to go and fight in Frankfort of the relationships I have to actually help get people in their homes, stay in their homes, even getting jobs that pays better so they can be able to afford their house to actually stay in there. So that's some of the things that I plan on actually doing.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
There's more than one issue that I think is important for the people of the 77th Legislative House District. The first thing I'd like to bring attention to is Amendment 2 on the ballot, which is dealing with the constitutional amendment to take public dollars to fund charter schools and private schools. We cannot afford that. The other problem that we have in the 77th District and in Kentucky and in these United States is guns and the proliferation of guns on our streets. I think that we have to get legislation through the General Assembly to deal with our gun issue and the gun violence that we have. The other thing in that is a gun safety issue that I put forward that deals with the Baby Dre Act and the safe storage of guns. There was a gentleman who came to us in the General Assembly and asked us to file a bill on behalf of his grandson. He was in a babysitting situation and there was a loaded gun. The gun fell, hit the ground, discharged, and killed his grandson. We haven't been able to get that bill heard, but we're going to file it again, and we're going to continue to file it again because it's the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Brown, you'll take this next question first, please. This is a long one. Despite no DEI-focused legislation passing in the most recent legislative session, there's talk about revisiting the issue in the next session. What is your stance on DEI-focused legislation, and how do you intend to support or oppose such measures?
First, I oppose the DEI legislation that was attempted in the last session. It is important to understand that diversity, equity, and inclusion is important in our community and in our nation. And we've got to think in terms of how we level the playing field. The playing field is skewed and not level at this point. People need to understand that we are at this place in the American history, in American life, not by accident, but because things have happened in history to cause us to be where we are. So it is important that we think in terms of why we do the things that we do, or why the things have happened in our society, that it is not by accident that people have been left out of the economic system of America. It is because there was not diversity, equity, and inclusion. If we were to turn the clock back and pass a piece of legislation dealing with diversity and equity and inclusion, that means that we'd be going back, and that would take away from what it is that's necessary for us to move forward as a state.
Thank you very much. Mr. Griffith, same question, please.
Okay, so when I look at DI, I look at the very first letter, which is D. I've been in Toyota for 21 years. They practice diversity. We have learned about diversity. They have workshops about diversity. We work with a pond of people all over the state, all over the beautiful state of Kentucky. So basically, it's not always about because of a skin color getting ahead. We actually have diversity to learn about each other's cultures, each other's ways, and that's actually helped us to migrate and become friends with Asian Americans, Black Americans, white Americans, Indian Americans, etc. So my thing is diversity to me is really good, but it's not always about getting ahead or because I'm a certain color. That means I got first dibs, however. So we just have to really look at the word diversity.
Thank you. And you'll take this next question first for us, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I have a couple of questions about education. So the first one is, Kentucky has faced ongoing debates about public education funding and teacher pay. What is your plan to address the funding challenges in our education system?
First, I've been to public school, and I am a pro public school, but I'm like, even with school choice, I truly believe that basically you should be able to actually choose wherever you want to actually send your child. But at the end of the day, it's not up to me, it's up to the voters. Whatever the voters see or whatever the voters want, we should be able to actually support that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brown?
As I spoke a minute ago about public education and Amendment 2, it is critical to understand that the Kentucky State Constitution dictates that we provide a common/public education for all of our people. We have limited dollars now. Dollars are not equally spread, and the people have questions about the public education system. I am a proponent of public education, always have been, and I think that vouchers, charters, and private school funding is not good for Kentucky. Just as an example, a couple of states, Florida, and I take that back, Ohio and Arizona have blown a billion-dollar hole, several billion-dollar hole in their budget as a result of vouchers and taking away taking money from the public trough and putting it into the charter schools. So I am firmly opposed to Amendment 2 and what it would do to our state.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm going to move on to healthcare now. You all have both talked about Amendment 2 as well as general education, so I think we're ready to move on. And Mr. Brown, this question will be for you to start. Kentucky has some of the highest rates of cancer, heart disease, and diabetes in the nation. How should the General Assembly work to improve healthcare access and affordability for Kentuckians?
I think that we have to expand healthcare and access to healthcare. There's not enough money. There's a move afoot nationally that we should roll back Obamacare, and that would only exacerbate the problem. I think it is critical and important that we think in terms of how we provide care and assistance to people to deal with unexpected health issues in our society. I have run on this issue ever since I ran initially in 2013 was elected in 14 and began serving in 15. So this issue about public health care is critical and important. And we cannot, in one of the most industrialized countries in the world, we should not be in a situation or a space and a place where people cannot have to struggle to get health care and think in terms of dying if and when they don't have funds to take care of an unexpected illness.
Thank you. Mr. Griffith?
I truly agree with expanding healthcare. The thing with healthcare is basically nobody should go without healthcare. There has to be extra funding for healthcare. Let's sit down at the table and let's get funding for healthcare so everybody can actually have access to healthcare.
Okay, thank you very much. A follow-up question in more detail. Given the recent changes in reproductive health care access at the national level, what is your stance on the abortion laws in Kentucky? And how would you approach this issue if you're elected?
Okay, I am not for abortion, but my thing is basically it's not up to me. I have my stance. It's up to the person who basically is pregnant, and I truly believe that there basically needs to be a certain time limit on whenever you could get abortion, and we have to look at basically rape and rape incest also. That needs to be taken into accountability. But my stand is I'm not God, but I have my own beliefs, and I truly believe I leave it to the person.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brown?
As legislators, we will have a vote on what we're going to do and how we go forward in terms of healthcare. Healthcare has been on my slate and on my agenda ever since I first ran in 2013. It still is, and it's even more acute today than it was in 2013, in that we have an abortion ban, or we have done away with, and the Supreme Court ruled and voted down Roe v. Wade. So we've got situations in our country that are occurring that women are dying, they're bleeding out in parking lots, and doctors and healthcare facilitators are afraid to give care as it deals with the healthcare, maternal healthcare for a woman. And I think we need to go back and we need to codify Roe v. Wade and put it in a situation that, as Senator Warnock says, is that the operating room is not big enough to have all legislators and all the people that are trying to legislate what happens with a woman and her pregnancy and what is done with her body.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, could you please take this next one first? What do you consider to be the greatest challenges to the justice system in Kentucky, and how would you like to correct them?
We have in Kentucky, I think, a draconian rule that people who have committed a felony and are convicted felons, that they essentially lose their voting rights for life. And I think disenfranchisement, as far as that is concerned with voting rights, is a serious problem. And I think that people who have served their time and paid all restitution should have the ability to vote and be participating members in our society. That to disenfranchise people from the vote is problematic. And I think that the more people that vote, the better the governance we will have. So I am opposed to the position that Kentucky has taken, that if ever you've committed a felony, that you will never have the right, you'll be disenfranchised for life. And that's problematic for me.
Thank you. Mr. Griffith?
I work with second chance entries every day. And that's one thing that Toyota has a great program. I am a champion of second chance reentries. My thing is they're just like everybody else. They want to be involved in a society. The guys see me right now and wants to be like, I want to be able to help. I want to be able to actually be in society, but I have this dark cloud over me. So my thing is, if you're able to work, if you're able to paying taxes, you're basically putting back into society. You should be able to actually vote and have your voting rights. And that's one thing that I do want to take the fight to Frankfurt, is to basically get reform done, criminal reform done. It's so important. I want to have these young men to come back to society and be community leaders. I want them to be fathers and family men to their kids, their family, and vice versa.
Okay, thank you. You'll take this next question first, please. What specific policies do you support to attract businesses and create jobs in Kentucky, particularly in rural areas?
I say basically trying to get that tax rate all the way down to zero. I truly believe that lowering taxes and understand you have to lowering taxes, got to take something. However, but that's something that we can actually work at and work at the table together. Uh, People works too hard to basically keep on paying high prices for food, high prices for clothing. However, so I want to be able to actually stand with my counterpartners to get that tax rate down to zero to get some more money into the to the people of the Commonwealth's pockets.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
Oh, that's a tough question. And I think that as we talk about lowering the tax rate, the thing that we have to understand is that if you lower taxes on one end, you got to pay taxes or you got to pay for it on the other end. That goods and services for the federal state government have to be paid for. And something that the citizens have not understood as we have reduced the state income tax, the state sales tax has gone up on goods and services that were not taxed before. So we have to understand that there's a give and take. And I think to a very large degree, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are mistaken in terms of how to deal with that and how to make more Kentuckians whole and give them more money in their pockets so that they can have expendable income and improve the quality of life for themselves and their families. So I think that we have jumped the gun in terms of reducing the state income tax. And I think that we have to look at tax reform in a more comprehensive way than we have looked at it. Thank you.
Thank you. And you'll be first on this next question, please. With increasing concerns about gun violence, do you believe Kentucky's current gun laws are sufficient, or would you support reforms? And if so, what type of reforms?
I would certainly support reform. I think there are way too many guns in the hands of people in our state, and that we have lethal weapons that are weapons of war. And I think we need to get those off the street. AR-15s, AK-47s, those weapons have no place in a civilized society. And I think people misinterpret the Second Amendment, and they use the second part of the Second Amendment and not looking at the whole of it. The Second Amendment says that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed upon. That's the second half. But the first part says, in order to have a well-regulated militia, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed upon. So the deal is that it is misinterpreted and is misapplied in modern society. And we don't have a need for a real well-regulated militia. The other thing is that in the late 18th century, when the Second Amendment was passed, that the citizens of the United States had muskets, single-shot weapons. We've got automatic weapons that will kill people, and they were made to kill people in war. And we've got these weapons on our street. So I am totally opposed to having those weapons on the street. We have to do serious gun reform in the Commonwealth of Kentucky and in the United States of America, in my opinion.
Thank you. Mr. Griffith, same question, please.
Okay, well, guns is not going anywhere. Everybody has guns. But what we can do is start to educate our kids, our families about guns, how you use guns, what they're there for, how to protect people with guns. It all starts in the home. And especially with these kids getting these guns, why is these? The question is basically to be asked: where is these guns at for your kids to get them? Because the guns does not kill people; it's the people who kills people. It could be simple as mental illness. However, bullying at school, it's a lot of stuff that we're not actually going and correcting. The very first thing is when we see a shooting, all the guns, got to get the guns off the streets. Let's look at it deeper. The kids, the parents, their background, who's governed over the kids, whose friends is friends with your kids. Are you checking out the parents of other parents with the kids? So it all starts in the home.
Okay, thank you very much. And you'll take this next question first, please. What actions would you take to protect voting rights and also ensure fair, transparent, and secure elections in Kentucky?
I wanted to actually go to Frankfurt to basically just put it down on the law. Everybody has a entitled to vote. It doesn't matter if it's mail-in ballots or voting in person. However, everybody has a right to vote. I do believe that basically we do need a ID, just like anything else. You go to get cigarettes, you need ID. You go need to get something that's 21 and over, you need ID. But to actually everything in the whole nutshell, voting is everybody's right, and you need to actually make it fair for everybody across the board. I've even said let's actually open up and let it stay open to 8 o'clock to vote because a lot of people gets off at 5. So by the time they come home or get to the polling place, they're not getting there to 6:30, 6:40, and the polls already closed. So let's take the polls and with the hours and extend them.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brown.
I'm a firm believer that voter suppression still exists in our society, and disenfranchising people from voting because of their criminal criminal background, or because of issues that they have in society. The more people that vote, the better elections we'll have and the better decisions that will be made by the elected officials. So I am a firm believer that disenfranchisement and voter oppression is not something that should happen in America. That we are bigger than that, in my opinion. We should have more, the more people that vote, the better quality of candidates that we'll have and the better quality of government we will have as a result of that.
Okay, thank you. And you'll take this question next. And that is, as a state with both coal mining and renewable energy industries, how do you propose balancing economic growth with environmental sustainability here in Kentucky?
We find ourselves at a place where coal has been king throughout the history of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. The environmental concerns that are in place are things that we need to deal with. And the economy, the climate is a serious problem, and fossil fuels and those things, probably coal is never coming back in terms of what it used to be, in terms of providing energy for the people of the Commonwealth and for the people of the United States, because we're suffering. We've got the issues of dealing with tornadoes and floods and hurricanes that are more severe now than they've ever been. The Arctic ice cap is melting, and we're having the oceans rise, and there's a problem. And scientists who are much smarter than I have said that is a part of what is occurring in our society or in the world. And we need to be very concerned about that. And we need to reduce the use of fossil fuels and get to more clean energy that does not affect the environment.
Thank you. Mr. Griffith?
All right. So based on working at Toyota, we, of course, it's a big plant. They are big about environment, from reducing waste to reducing emissions to basic clean energy. I'm 100% behind clean energy and clean environment. And that's some of the stuff that I want to be able to take that I've learned from the plant out of 21 years to apply it within Frankfort of saving with energy, because I'm just like Representative Brown. I don't believe the coal's not coming back, but we can actually do things of waste management, water management, consuming of extra water that we don't need.
Okay, thank you very much. And this is going to be our final question. We're going to run out of time. And that is, what's your perspective on working across the aisle with representatives from the other political party? And can you identify some issues that would lend themselves to this? And that would be you, Mr. Griffith.
All right. Again, like I said, I'm blessed to actually have the relationships with the supermajority. And by me being in Frankfort, to actually be able to actually look on the other aisle, I want to be able to actually share the ideas. Here's the thing that we're all missing. We need to actually have that seat at the table. Let's have that seat at the table. Let's talk about it. There's always going to be a no or a yes, a no or a yes, however, but I truly believe that basically we can all be on one page, and we got to start thinking about the voter. We work for the people, we serve the people, our seats serve the people. We're not serving ourselves. So I want to be able to actually work with from the supermajority to the super minority, and come together, because at the end of the day, it's all about the voters. And I think that we're losing the message when it comes to the voters.
Thank you. Mr. Brown? Ooh, that's a tough question. I think that, and actually going from theory to practice, it is extremely difficult to make happen. That's something that certainly I need to do better, and I will look to work better at forming coalitions across the aisle. But it is very difficult to deal with a super majority that does not have to work across the aisle, that do not have to consider what my opinions are or the opinions of the people that have elected me are. It is, I think, Pollyannish to think that anybody can go to Frankfurt and be in the super minority and get the people in the super majority to work with you to make substantive and positive change. They have serious ideas about what they would like to have happen in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and they are seriously pushing those issues. And it is extremely difficult for those of us in the super minority to deal with how we work with and cooperate and collaborate with people from the other side of the aisle.
Okay, thank you. And thank both of you for your excellent answers to all the questions. We'll now turn to closing remarks. We drew a second time for the order of closing remarks, and each candidate will have 60 seconds. And they'll go in this order: Mr. Griffith first, followed by Mr. Brown. Mr. Griffith, please go ahead with your closing remarks.
All right. I think that I have the relationships to actually have that seat at the table with the supermajority to actually get things done, to get heard on the floor. I really want to serve the 77th district, serve the voters of Kentucky. Honestly, it's time for something new face. I give all respect to the representation that's over right now, but we're coming to a different new society now. And I want to be able to actually get these young men off the streets, get these drugs off the streets, get some resources, the homeless. I want to be able to work with the homeless. I've got in contact with a couple of the homeless shelters. They are ready to work with me. These are issues that's in the 77th district that is not being addressed. It's all about resources. If you cannot get resources, it doesn't matter if you're the president of the United States all the way back to the state and local level. It's about resources. If you cannot get the resources, are you really not talking about nothing? And let's get somebody in there that can really get the resources to get the ball moving.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, your closing remarks, please.
I'd like to just bring a couple of issues to the citizens of the 77th district and to the people of the Commonwealth. What I would hope people would understand is that there is legislation that gets passed all the time, and legislation has to go through. You can file legislation. I filed the pieces of legislation, but the legislation has not been referred to committee. I want to talk about two things before my time is up that I would like to file legislation or co-sponsor legislation in the next session. One of those is right to work. And that is a piece of legislation that is difficult for people to understand. Right to work is legislation that was passed in 2017 that took away or actually put in position where people were able to work for less. And we've got that right to work legislation that I would like to get removed and get that taken down so that unions, it's a union busting bill. And then also prevailing wage is one that was passed in 2017 that took away the rights for people that were working on government jobs and contracts and reduced their pay. So those are some things that are important. I would also ask that people would vote for George Brown on November the 5th and elect me to go back to Frankfurt to continue the difficult work that I have been doing heretofore.
We'd like to thank the candidates for participating today. We really appreciate your both being here with us and sharing your ideas with the potential voters. If you're interested in League membership, check out our website at lwvlexington.com. Be sure to make a plan to vote and look for additional information from the candidates on vote411.org. Early voting is available to any registered voter on the Thursday, Friday, and Saturday immediately before General Election Day. This year, that's October 31st, November 1st, and November 2nd at any of the 6 public libraries in Lexington from 8:30 to 4:30. Election Day is Tuesday, November 5th, and as usual, the polls will be open from 6 to 6. Be sure to bring your driver's license or any qualifying form of identification. Thank you so much for joining us.